What's hiding in Bill C-4? They promise tax relief, but are taking your privacy instead? Bill C-4 was presented by the Liberals as a straightforward tax relief package designed to provide some financial breathing room for Canadians struggling with rising costs. On the surface, the bill includes a small reduction in the lowest personal income tax bracket, a change touted by Finance Minister François-Philippe Champagne and Prime Minister Mark Carney as a necessary measure to help low-income earners. However, this tax cut won't take effect immediately. It's phased in over several years and wasn't even part of the Liberals' official election platform. This raises questions about whether the bill's tax relief is truly a priority or just a political maneuver designed to gain votes without delivering meaningful help in the short term. In addition to the tax bracket adjustment, Bill C-4 introduces a temporary goods and services tax, GST, rebate on new homes. This rebate is available only to buyers who purchase between May 2025 and 2031, with possession required by 2036. The government frames this as a way to make housing more affordable for new homeowners. Yet, the reality is more complicated. By creating a limited-time incentive tied to such a long possession window, the bill encourages a rush in home buying, which risks driving up housing demand artificially. This could inflate prices further, helping builders offload inventory quickly and allowing the Liberals to boast about increased housing starts during their term. Unfortunately, this temporary boost could lead to a dangerous housing bubble that eventually bursts, leaving Canadians with higher costs and no real solutions. While the bill also repeals the consumer carbon tax, the impact of this move is negligible since the tax rate has already been reduced to zero. This repeal serves more as political theater, a symbolic gesture that adds weight to the bill's affordability narrative but doesn't produce tangible benefits for Canadians. It's a classic example of form over substance, designed to make the bill appear comprehensive and multifaceted when, in truth, it offers very little immediate relief. However, the most troubling part of Bill C-4 lurks in its fourth section, which amends the Elections Canada Act in a way completely unrelated to taxes. This provision eliminates the requirement for political parties to submit their privacy policies to the Chief Electoral Officer, CEO, and removes penalties for failing to comply with privacy standards. Privacy policies are critical because they govern how parties collect, use, store, and protect personal information. Without mandatory submission or enforcement, parties could operate with little transparency, hiding how they manage sensitive data and reducing accountability for misuse or negligence. Canada's current privacy framework already contains significant loopholes. Provincial privacy laws do not apply to federal political parties unless those parties voluntarily include provisions in their own privacy policies. Bill C-4 shifts oversight solely to the federal level and simultaneously weakens that oversight. Political parties will no longer be required to respond to data access or correction requests from individuals, meaning citizens cannot demand changes to or deletion of their personal information held by parties. This directly contradicts the principles of the Personal Information Protection and Electronic Documents Act, PIPEDA, which mandates organizations to comply with such requests in the private sector. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre has been outspoken against Bill C-4, framing it as a political bait-and-switch. According to Poilievre, while the Liberals claim to prioritize affordability, the real agenda is weakening privacy protections and consolidating control over Canadians' personal data. He argues that this bill is less about helping people and more about playing political games, trapping Conservatives into opposing tax cuts that are not fully realized or meaningful, all while eroding privacy safeguards that protect voters from invasive data practices. Prime Minister Mark Carney and his cabinet defend the legislation as a necessary modernization of the electoral process and a simplification of bureaucratic requirements. They contend that political parties will still publish privacy policies voluntarily and that the oversight mechanisms currently in place are outdated and redundant. According to Carney, these changes are intended to streamline procedures without compromising transparency or privacy. He emphasizes that the government's focus remains on delivering economic relief while updating administrative rules for efficiency. Despite these reassurances, privacy advocates and political analysts warn that Bill C-4's timing and content are suspect. The linkage of privacy amendments to a tax bill is unusual and suspicious, allowing the Liberals to conflate tax relief with privacy rollback in public discourse. Any conservative opposition to the bill can be painted as a refusal to support tax cuts, which complicates democratic debate. Meanwhile, Canadians remain largely unaware of the profound implications for their personal data rights embedded in the legislation. The privacy implications are significant. Political parties routinely collect extensive data on both supporters and non-supporters, including contact information, voting preferences, and even behavioral data gathered through canvassing and digital tracking. Without proper oversight, this data can be exploited for targeted campaigning that manipulates voter opinions and influences elections on a granular level. The potential for abuse grows when parties are freed from accountability and transparency requirements. For ordinary Canadians, this means their personal information could be gathered and retained indefinitely, with little or no ability to control or correct it. Imagine being asked for your email or phone number by a campaign volunteer, only to find out later you cannot request its deletion or verify how it's being used. The stakes are high, especially when political data can be combined with other digital information to create detailed voter profiles, shaping political messaging and potentially skewing democratic processes. Bill C-4's controversial privacy provisions are introduced at a time when public attention is focused heavily on taxes and affordability, not on data privacy or election law. This obscures the critical nature of the changes and limits public debate on the issue. Once the bill passes, it will be difficult to reverse the privacy rollback without triggering accusations of blocking tax relief. This is more than a political squabble. It touches on the very foundations of Canadian democracy. Removing effective privacy protections for political parties undermines citizens' ability to trust the election process. It shifts the balance of power towards those who control data and information flows, rather than toward voters who deserve transparency and control over their personal details. Canadians need to be vigilant. The progress of Bill C-4 must be tracked closely, and MPs from all parties should be questioned about the privacy implications. Citizens should demand stronger protections, clear rights to access and correct data, and enforceable accountability measures. Financial relief should not come at the cost of democratic integrity and personal privacy. In conclusion, while Bill C-4 may deliver a modest tax cut and a temporary housing incentive, it also masks significant threats to privacy and transparency in Canadian politics. Prime Minister Mark Carney and Finance Minister Champagne may tout this as a balanced affordability package, but the hidden changes to election law reveal a darker agenda. Canadians deserve both economic support and robust privacy protections. If we allow political data to be managed without oversight, we risk losing control over how our democracy functions. Protecting privacy is protecting democracy itself.